and we're very pleased to welcome you here today to announce our motion to intervene in a lawsuit that threatens the economic liberty of transportation entrepreneurs in Chicago. I'll make some introductions. I'm joined here today by Anthony Sanders. He's also an IJ attorney and the lead attorney on the case. And we're here today with our three clients, who are all ride-sharing drivers in Chicago. We have Dan Burgess, who drives for UberX, Sidecar, and Lyft, Ted Liu, who drives for UberX and Lyft, and Dustin Morby, who also drives for UberX and Lyft. And we're also joined today by the staff of the Institute for Justice's University of Chicago Law School Clinic on Entrepreneurship. So we have Sal Churi, Beth Krieger, and Brooke Fallon here with us today. So after those introductions, I'm going to make a few more remarks, and then I'll turn it over to Anthony to give you more details about the case. And then he's going to turn it over to our client Dan to tell you why he's here today and what this case means to him. And then we'll open it up to questions from you. So first of all, the Institute... Yes? Oh, sure. Absolutely. I'm Renee Flaherty, RENEE FLAHERTY, with the Institute for Justice. So the Institute for Justice is a public interest law firm that litigates across the country to restore constitutional limits on government power. As I said before, we have chapters all across the country, including here in Chicago, where we have a clinic with the University of Chicago Law School. So the Institute has been fighting for transportation freedom for over 20 years. And we've won victories in places like New York, Denver, and Milwaukee on behalf of transportation entrepreneurs. Today we're here to announce our latest fight for transportation freedom on behalf of Chicago ride-sharing drivers. Anthony?
Thank you, Renee. Hello, good morning, and welcome. My name is Anthony Sanders, S-A-N-D-E-R-S, and I am an attorney with the Institute for Justice in our Minnesota chapter. We are here today, so I'll start over. Give you a moment. Do you need the mic up? Yeah, no problem. No problem. You ready? That's why I hate doing things live.
Good?
Thanks. Hello, good morning, and welcome. My name is Anthony Sanders, S-A-N-D-E-R-S, and I am an attorney with the Institute for Justice in our Minnesota chapter. Today we are filing a motion to intervene in the lawsuit that taxi cab owners have brought against the city of Chicago. We represent three ride-sharing drivers. These gentlemen here, their names are Dan Burgess, B-U-R-G-E-S-S, Ted Liu, L-I-U, and Dustin Morby, M-O-R-B-Y. These three gentlemen are transportation entrepreneurs who are serving the public by providing a new method of transportation. And yet, the taxi cab owners are trying to get the city to arrest these men because they offer competition to the entrenched taxi cab interests. We are here to announce to the federal courts that there is no constitutional right to be free from competition, and there is no constitutional right to have the government arrest your business competitors, which is what the taxi cab companies are arguing. These men provide something that has been provided for decades, that is, giving people a ride with your own automobile. But because of modern technology, they're allowed to take that to a different level. Smart-based ride-sharing technologies allows drivers to earn extra money to help make ends meet by using assets they already have. At the same time, it allows riders to get a new mode of transportation to move around the city, something that Chicagoans desperately need. And yet, instead of talking about how we can encourage this innovation, instead the debate is about whether or not we should crush it. That needs to change. The taxi cab owners are arguing there is a constitutional right for the city to shut down their competition. In fact, the Constitution protects against anti-competitive laws such as the taxi cab ordinance. And there is no constitutional right for the city to go out and arrest the taxi cab owners' competitors. The taxi cab owners erroneously believe that the city has a constitutional duty to maintain regulations originally drawn up in the early 20th century that are today antiquated and anti-competitive. Instead, we should be working on a new ordinance or new laws that embrace this new technology and allow it to serve the public. If entrenched interests like the taxi cab owners had their way, Chicagoans would still be hailing horse and buggies, and the innovation of the automobile would have not been allowed to compete against horse and buggies. In fact, if the logic of the taxi cab owners' complaint were taken where it logically should follow, the city has a duty to not do things like create new bus lines, make new bike trails, or even improve the city streets, because all of those offer options other than catching a cab. That is simply what this case is about, is the taxi cab owners trying to prevent the public from having different options to move around the city. I'm now going to turn it over to one of our clients. His name is Dan Burgess, B-U-R-G-E-S-S. He has been ride sharing for almost a year here in the city, and he's going to talk about what ride sharing means to him and his involvement. Dan?
Thank you, Anthony. My name is Dan Burgess. I've been driving for UberX, Lyft, and Sidecar for 11 months. In that time, I've given over 500 rides. The process is safe and convenient. To use ride sharing, one installs an app on a smartphone and puts in credit card information into the app. Then using the GPS on the smartphone, one can request a ride. We drive to where they are and pick them up. They often sit in the front seat, and it's a friendly and casual conversation ensues during the ride. When we get to the destination, they just get right out and they pay by credit card through the app. It is convenient and easy and comfortable and safe for both the passenger and the driver. At the end of the transaction, both parties rate each other. So there's a two-sided rating system. If either party gets a bad accumulation of ratings, they can be terminated from the service immediately. So people enjoy this innovative way of getting around Chicago. It offers another option to the existing forms of transportation that we have in Chicago. We've been doing this for the better part of a year. It's worked out very well, and people enjoy it. And UberX, Sidecar, and Lyft should be allowed to continue operating in the city of Chicago. I proudly joined the Institute for Justice in asking the court to dismiss this lawsuit filed by the taxi industry, trying to shut us down and stop what we're doing, which is safe and enjoyable. Sharing is not a crime. Thank you very much.
And now we're available for questions.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sure.
How much have you paid in fees and that kind of thing to the city? Anything yet?
I don't know if there's any city collection of the fees. I don't know anything about that. I know that when a passenger gets a ride, they pay through the app. Each company has a percentage that they keep, and they pass on the majority to us. I don't know what might go to the city.
But you don't pay specifically, like cabbies have to pay for their medallion. You don't pay anything to the city.
I'm not aware of any payment like that.
So I guess what I'm interested in asking is what makes you guys different from cab drivers, and what makes you exempt to the same rules that they also have in regulations?
But and I like to say our involvement in this lawsuit is not about sensible, reasonable regulation related to health and safety that the city is thinking about in regulating ride sharing. This lawsuit is about the taxi cab owners' attempt to use their antiquated ordinance, taxi cab ordinance, to stifle ride sharing. So we are not saying that in the future we won't pay fees if there is a reasonable regulation of ride sharing. What we are saying is the taxi cab owners cannot use the federal courts to stifle any ordinance. The taxi cab owners are not just saying that these people should be shut down because they're competition for them now. They're saying any ordinance that would legitimize ride sharing is unconstitutional. And that in itself is an argument that is going to be thrown out of court.
Anthony, what are you talking about people being arrested or like one of the cabbies wanting these guys to be arrested?
Yeah, that is what they are asking the federal courts to do, is to order the city to enforce to the T the existing taxi cab ordinance that says you need to buy a medallion of perhaps $360,000 in order to drive people around, which would regulate ride shares in a way that they shouldn't be regulated. Taxi cabs are not the same as ride shares. They both drive people around the city, but there's no reason to regulate ride shares the same way because you don't order them the same way. You use your smartphone. You know what cab is going to pick you up. You know what the driver is.
But you can use your smartphone to order a cab, so why is it an equal for ride sharing no matter what the
Well, what the taxi cab owners are saying is that you should have to buy a medallion worth $360,000, which was drawn up in an ordinance almost 100 years ago and is anti-competitive and stifles innovation and should never be changed in the future. The owners are saying there should never be any competition against their medallions because they have a constitutional right to keep them at their inflated value.
So would you say that no one has to buy a medallion?
Well, that is not what this lawsuit is about.
No, but what it would be.
But if the city chose to change its laws and to lift the cap on medallions, like the city of Minneapolis did a few years ago, that is perfectly constitutional. And when the city of Minneapolis did that, the existing taxi cab owners there sued and said that was unconstitutional. That lawsuit was thrown out with help from our law firm that intervened in that case, and this lawsuit will also be thrown out of court.
So you don't have any of them pro bono, or are they?
These men are paying nothing us for our services, just like all of our other clients. We represent them pro bono as a public interest law.
Anthony, you know regulations coming from the state, from the city. Is there a point at which you say it's too much?
We think that reasonable regulation having to do with health and safety is perfectly legitimate, that mandates insurance, which these men already have, which mandates inspections on vehicles. If there are anti-competitive parts of that, such as the current proposal, I think, says you can't go to the airport or to McCormick Place, those are transparently anti-competitive and should not be included in the ordinance.
Setting fares. Should the fares be the same for these guys as for cabbies? Should they have to go to the same neighborhood?
I'm sorry. Again, that is not part of this lawsuit, but whether fares should be regulated is a different question. How these companies charge their fares is often below what the cab companies charge, and so it is a benefit for consumers in how these companies currently operate.
It was a great question.
It was.
You can call me later, no problem.
Drivers,
Absolutely.
can you tell me, like, your insurance companies know that you're driving for ride sharing? Yeah, and what have you told them about this?
I have a personal, I have full coverage insurance on my car. I drive a 2014 Toyota Camry. When I am driving for UberX, there's a full insurance policy in effect, up to $1 million. So my insurance is not needed if I am on my way to a passenger or if I have a passenger in my car.
Doesn't it apply, you're operating a commercial enterprise from your vehicle, is your passenger covered should you plow into a truck?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you sure?
The Uber policy is up to $1 million.
Your policy is provided by Uber.
Yes.
How do you respond to the cabbies who say, we gave a lot of money to get into this game, we have a lot of regulations and a here come these guys who are operating completely under the radar without any laws.
We have rules. We have. I went through a background check. My driving record was checked. You can't have more than 2 moving violations in 3 years. You have to have insurance, current registration, and driver's license, and all that. We are regulated, and with the 5-star rating system, the way it is in place, that is actually the best rating system, the best system that could be in place. I would like to challenge that if cab companies put a 5-star rating system in place, what would happen?
Can you understand where an individual cabbie who's dropped $200 grand on a medallion is coming from when they say that these guys can't just come in here and start doing what we're doing? You know, they invest their life savings in this thing, and they take 20 years for them to make that money back to break even.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, our response. Sorry.
Yeah, what's your first name?
Dustin Morby, Morby.
How long have you been driving?
Since May of last year.
The argument that you've invested money in a medallion and so therefore the city can't allow ride sharing because the value of the medallion go down means that the city can never do anything to allow the value of the medallion go down. The people who bought medallions knew that laws can change in the future. So the city can apparently never add more medallions, never lift the cap on medallions, never provide alternative methods of transportation. If the city built a bunch of new bike trails and built a bunch of new and allowed a bunch of new bus lines, that would cause medallion values to go down because people wouldn't have to take cabs as much. There'd be alternative methods of transportation. Yet the taxi cab owners saying there is a constitutional right for the city not to provide that alternative services because they have a right to keep the medallions at the current inflated price. That means that there is a duty to never change Chicago's taxi cab laws. That is an argument that will never work in a court of law because it means that laws can never change.
So, how successful have these companies been? Rideshare companies?
The rideshare companies themselves we don't represent. It seems like they're doing very well. They're expanding in different markets around the country and around the world. Our drivers have done very well helping make ends meet by driving a few hours a week or 40 hours a week in order to move the public around the city, a service the public desperately needs.
The taxi industry wants the city to enforce its own ordinance. Why should the city enforce the rules that are on the books?
Well, the city is enforcing the ordinance. We know of ride-sharing drivers who have, in recent weeks, been arrested and have their cars impounded. The taxi cab owners just want the city to enforce them more, and while the city is working on a sensible alternative ordinance that will bring ride sharers under the regulatory structure. And that is all the city is trying to do in not enforcing its laws as much.
Can you ask your clients if the city did impose some of the regulations that are being talked about, would you still drive for a ride share?
Rodeo?
Step up and like.
What was the question?
If the city did impose some of the regulations they're talking about, would it still be worthwhile for you to drive ride share?
It would depend on the results of that legislation. The taxi companies are pushing for much stronger regulations. They're trying to regulate us out of existence. If the regulations got to that point, then it would no longer be worthwhile. That's why we're trying to work with the city to reach an equitable balance of a reasonable regulation that will allow us to continue in the face of, or coexist with the taxi companies. A lot of our markets do not overlap, so we can cover markets that they do not, versus they can also cover markets that we do not. So there's also non-overlapping markets. We should be allowed to coexist. There's no reason to legislate your competitors out of business. Ted, T-E-D, Lou, L-I-U.
Were you guys buddies and you called the lawyers?
Well, So we reached out to them when we saw this lawsuit was filed. We represented, as Renee said earlier, we represented transportation entrepreneurs in several cities across the country. Just recently we had Milwaukee's taxi cab cap on the number of taxi cabs ruled unconstitutional and allowed that market to expand. And so when we saw this lawsuit filed here, we reached out to ride sharers in Illinois to see if they'd be interested to fight back.
What's the timetable right now with the cabby lawsuit? So just to be clear, they're asking that rideshare just be gone. Stop.
Right, they are asking the federal judge to rule that the city's actions in not enforcing their ordinance as much as they would like is a constitutional taking, and so they should be compensated for the reduction in medallion values. And they are also asking the city to be ordered to go out and arrest their competitors and find them and impound their vehicles. The timetable on that is that the city needs to respond within a couple of weeks, and we don't know what the city's response will be yet. They may move to dismiss, as we would like to. They may answer and go forward to discovery. We will have our motion to intervene heard in the coming weeks, and then after we are into the case, we will have our motion to dismiss adjudicated by Judge Coleman, and that will probably be over the course of the summer. The lawsuit is against the city. We are intervener defendants on the same side of the city, but of course with different interests than the city has.
So the lawsuit that you're talking about is the cab lawsuit against
Yes,
the city?
it is the cab law. We are defendants in that lawsuit. We are asking to be defendants.
The Mayor Emanuel does support talking to him, the city,
Well, we ourselves have not talked directly with him, but we are involved in watching the legislation, and we will be commenting on the legislation. And our friends at the clinic at the University of Chicago, they have been working in the city for 15 years on encouraging entrepreneurship and innovation, and they have been watching closely developments at City Hall, and we're encouraged by some developments, discouraged by others, but we hope the city will come to a good solution. For the Institute for Justice, it's a public policy issue in terms of encouraging ride sharing. It is a constitutional issue in making sure that the federal courts do not set a precedent that there is a constitutional right